Hello students, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Your English Teacher. I am Ritu Bhandari and today we are going to study the poem Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. This is one of the poems in Flamingo textbook for class 12. When we read the title of a poem, there are certain inferences that we as people make, as a reader make. Keeping quiet can have a number of connotations. It can be interpreted in a different way. But without any further discussion, I'm just going to read the poem without giving any kind of insight once we learn more about Pablo Neruda. So Pablo Neruda's profile is as such. He was born in 1904 in Parral, Chile, South America. His father was a railway employee and his mother was a teacher. He studied in the University of Chile and he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. In this poem, Neruda talks about the necessity of quiet introspection and create a feeling of mutual understanding amongst human beings. The saddest part is, even in 2020, the next century, we will find that how relevant this poem stands even today. When we look at the way he has explained certain situations, we'll understand, we'll find it very, very strange. And after so many years, these lines are so relevant. Let's look at what does it all talk about. It talks about self-introspection. That's what Pablo Neruda said. A simple poem that talks about self-analysis, self-introspection, the need to build up a new world. It means that self-analysis would only come when we are able to find time for meditation. So I'm just going to read the poem. Now we will count to 12. And we will all keep still. For once on the face of earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is all about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness. Sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count to 12. You keep quiet and I will go. So allow the meaning, allow the poem to seep in. Allow the poem to talk to you. Allow it to bring different emotions. And you'll find that these lines are so relevant even during these times. So we'll go back to the stanza and understand each line in detail. So now let's go back to the first line in this poem. Now we will count to 12, he says, and we will all keep still. When he says 12, there are different interpretations. It could refer to generally 12 hours in, he's taken up that number because there are 12 hours in a day, there are 12 numbers on a clock, and this is the reason why he's just randomly picked up a number. So he says he initiates the process of self-introspection after he counts till number 12. He says, for once on the face of earth, that's on earth, let nobody speak. Let nobody even engage in any kind of work, because he says, let's stop for 1 second. Let us not move our arms so much. When he says arms, he refers to work. He does not refer to arms and ammunition here. He says, let us pause. He says it would be an exotic moment. Why exotic? Because it would be certainly something that has never ever happened before. What has never ever happened before? It's the fact that the whole world has come to a pause, come to a standstill, all at the same time, no matter what language they speak in. And the language is indicated of what country they belong to. So without any rush, without any hurry to complete some task, without engines, that means even the factories are paused, even the work has come to a halt. He says at that time it would be an exotic moment because that has never ever happened before. And the whole of the earth, everybody would be together in a sudden strangeness. Sudden strangeness in terms of it's never happened before that the whole earth is going to be quiet at that one time. So he says that the fishermen are also going to stop. They're going to stop harming whales. And the man who's gathering salt will stop and pause and look at his hands. The poet has just randomly picked up 2 professions, but both the professions are indicative of some other professions as well. They stand for that, symbolically stand for different professions that are harming not only nature, but are also harming men. So fishermen are indicative of those professions where man is harming nature, exploiting nature, using resources. Whereas man gathering salt is representative of all those professions in which man, without realizing, is actually harming himself. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, no matter what war you represent, all those people are also going to pause. Green wars refer to biowarfare. There are other interpretations like, suppose a set of locusts, tons and tons of locusts are spread on a specific country so that their crops are ruined. That's green wars. It could also be a biowarfare. You never know, COVID could have been a biowarfare. Wars with gas, wars with fire, ammunition, no matter what wars, but at times you don't have even survivors to celebrate that victory. So at times Pablo Neruda is indicating that what has man done? He's engaged himself in so many wars that people don't tend to realize that at times there might not even be survivors to enjoy and celebrate that victory. He asks them to pause also, to put on clean clothes, walk about with their brothers. Now these are brothers, people whom they were fighting with have become brothers. In the shade of doing nothing. In the shade is a relief, as I told you even in the Thing of Beauty poem. Shade is a relief from the scorching heat of the sun. So here shade is a relief from the seemingly perennial war zone, a relief from fighting, and they walk hand in hand, put on clean clothes. They want to start afresh, look at the situation with a new perspective, find out a solution that can lead to peace and end all war. So here these men who are engaged in wars are going to pause. They're going to put on clean clothes, start afresh, look at the situation with a new perspective, and look at the possibility of finding a solution peacefully. Now, the poet is a bit afraid that there's a possibility people would misinterpret his quest for pause, for stillness, as total inactivity. He doesn't preach total inactivity, and he says that life is what we make of it. And he is not preaching the silence that is associated with death. That's why he says, I want no truck with death. He says that I am not advocating the silence that is associated with death. I am advocating the silence that is associated with self-introspection, with meditation, with looking into our own souls and understanding what is it we want from life. He says man is so single-minded. He doesn't have time for all this. Single-minded, running a rat race, aiming to achieve some particular goal all the time in a rush. And he keeps on moving. He means man keeps on running and yearning to achieve more and more. But somehow there's a sadness that lies within him. And that sadness is accompanied with a huge silence. And maybe that huge silence is going to help him understand the sadness, despite the fact he's all the time in a rush. I correct myself here. I mean to say that huge silence which Pablo Neruda is advocating. He says that silence of introspection, that silence of meditation might interrupt the sadness which man feels in his rush to achieve something, in his rush to achieve a particular goal. And what is that sadness? The sadness of never understanding ourselves. And what do? We don't pause and think whether we really want this from life. And we keep on threatening ourselves with more work, keep on threatening ourselves with fulfillment of deadlines, and we keep on threatening ourselves with ultimately death. So Pablo Neruda is advocating man must pause, must self-introspect, must look into his desires, critically analyze them, see whether this is the life he wants. He says maybe Earth can teach us. Earth is with a capital E, so I would say it's maybe Earth can teach us. From a distance it seems it's like any other planet Earth, any other planet, but actually it's buzzing with life. From a distance the planet Earth seems as if it's like any other planet of the solar system, but when you go near, it later proves to be alive. So he's drawing a parallel between a person who is self-introspecting, meditating, and a person who's lying dead maybe. That's what poet is trying to say, that he wants no truck with death. He's not advocating the silence that is associated with death. He is advocating the silence that is associated with self-meditation. There's a possibility from a distance, both of them lying down may seem the same, but one is buzzing with life. He's just paused. The silence associated with the person who is self-meditating is not the same as the one which is associated with a dead person. So Pablo Neruda is drawing a parallel between earth and self-meditation. So he says, that's all he has to say. He says, now I'll count to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. So let's look at the literary devices. I know I've quickly switched over to that, but this is a heavy, huge poem that brings out a lot of thought. It makes you think that is this what I want to do. When I come down to students level, I say that you need to check, you need to pause. Is this what you want from life? You're doing commerce, you're doing arts, you're taking up sciences. Is this what you want? You need to pause and check. So let's see. So let's look at the literary devices. Count to 12 here symbolizes a measure of time. The clock has 12 markings in it. There are 12 months. The day has 12 hours. And let's is again and again repeated. Let's. And the repetition brings a lot of stress. Fishermen in the cold sea will no longer harm whales, and the man gathering salt will look at his hurt hands. It's a symbolic image, as I showed you, that the fisherman here refers to a profession where man is harming nature, ruthlessly destroying it, and whereas the man gathering salt, he's going to check whether he's taking care of himself or not. So it becomes symbolic. Put on clean clothes is a metaphor. It means that he's going to cleanse his soul. He's going to start afresh. Brothers become a symbol of mankind. In the shade, again metaphor, as I told you, a shade protects us from the scorching heat. But here the shade refers to let's take a pause and take care of each other, as if we are brothers. No truck, euphemism. So here the poet doesn't want to seem to be too rude and crude, and he says, I don't want any truck with death. He wants to sound much more refined, and instead of using a harsh word, he uses a much more mellowed down word to convey the same idea. Earth can teach us is when everything seems to be still is actually alive. So it's a simile. Everything that apparently seems to be dead on the surface is actually dormant and is carefully preserving the seeds of life. So I really hope that you've understood the chapter, the poem, and I know you would be looking forward to certain question answers that would definitely be uploaded. And do visit the channel again, children. Subscribe to it, ring the bell so that you don't miss any updates. And I really hope I am of some help to all of you. And good luck, and good luck always. Bye-bye.